Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben-Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Heaven is like a roof to the material world, and will serve as the floor of the new world. It is by nature shining and glorious, and is the dwelling place of the invisible hosts. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio, and I thank all of you for taking the time to join us in live broadcast. I am joined by publisher Paul Rains. Paul, are you there, brother?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Definitely.
All right. Excellent. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. I saw that you are do, similar to what we do in republishing a lot of lost and forgotten and forbidden material. And so I was intrigued by the selection of books that you do have available. And so can you tell people of what you do, your website, contact information, and where they can go to support your work?
Yes. I started collecting books based on of course Biblical Cosmology, Flat Earth Cosmology. I'm gonna kind of go into how I started it. I started with actually with studying Orlando Ferguson. I was really interested in his square world map, and I had really wanted to find his book, The Square World. And so I started studying real deep into old newspapers and world catalogs and all over the internet, really, just to where I could find it. And finally, I managed to find the institution that had the only copy of it left in the world. So I contacted them, and needless to say, they released it to me. And from that point on, I decided that I could probably do that for all the old Flat Earth books. So I started collecting all of them. I actually went into old newspapers and in the back of other materials and found old advertisements for them, all kinds of stuff, man. And to where, I mean, I'm still doing lots of research. I think I've accumulated over 500 plus books on zetetic cosmology from old zetetics of the mid 1800s through the mid 1900s. And like for instance, William Carpenter, he wrote. Most people are familiar with his 100 proofs the Earth is not a globe.
Right.
Well, he also wrote like 30 other books, proving that the Earth is a stationary plane. And not just him, but John Hampton, he actually wrote about 30 books as well. Lady Blount, she wrote a lot of books. Albert Smith, Samuel Robotham, many of them. And most of the books, they've been lost in history and just they're at like they're scattered all over the world at different museums, libraries, universities, buried in either boxes or in vaults, under glass. And some of them are so rare and brittle. And I've had to contact all these universities and libraries and everything just to get them to handle them and to scan them for me. And I've had to pay quite a lot to get them to do it. Each book. So it's been a long process, but needless to say, I've acquired a lot of books, and so I opened up a Facebook group called Flat Earth Books, and I released some of the digital copies on there for free. But I also try to reprint the books. If anyone wants the reprints, then I opened up a web page, Facebook page for that called Flat Earth Books as well, and also I so anyway, most of them are written before the 1923, so most of them are available to reprint. Some of them aren't, as I'm not allowed to give out, obviously, because I had to sign disclosures and stuff because they're still under copyright. So some of them I'm not allowed to give out, but most of them I am if they're if they come out before
Older.
1923.
Yeah, yeah. That is amazing, brother. I applaud you in your work and your efforts. I think that what you are doing is so valuable and it will be prized by later generations in a manner that we all just are really not going to be able to comprehend right now because the as far as disclosure with regard to this particular truth, there's still yet so few that have um, begun to really investigate it with open mind, and most of the world is unable to overcome their indoctrination and what they think they know already with regard to truth, to even entertain the possibilities of what we are talking about. And yet it's so very easy to confirm that there's no curvature. That curvature is completely non-existent, and so no matter what you think about the shape of the Earth, it certainly can't be spherical. And then with regard to the properties and dynamic of water, water cannot adhere to a ball, and nor can it assume a curved form. It will always gather together in pool until it settles in horizontal level. And so, again, with regard to truth, it's easy to determine that what we have been taught of cosmology and of the dynamics of the so-called solar system are absolutely fabricated. And we have to reconsider an entire paradigm shift on all that we thought we knew with regard to this discussion. And yet so few even begin that journey. And so I want to ask you about yourself and how you came to this truth, and also similarly, how you came to truth on a lot of other issues and what was the catalyst for you. And so if you would, like for myself, 9/11 was the big thing, that led me into examining the New World Order and government sponsored terror, and then, all the aspects of the New World Order and conspiracy and all that. And so, can you kind of tell us about your journey and your awakening?
Oh, definitely. Well, for one, I was raised in church. Of course, I'm I'm right here in North Carolina, so I'm right kind of smack dab in the Bible Belt of North Carolina of the United States. So I was raised in church, strict church actually, very strict. Pentecostal preacher is my grandpa, and my mother actually is married to a pastor as well. So I was kind of raised in church, and I kind of ran from God a lot of my life. And but then after my teenage years, I ended up God restored everything in my life, and needless to say, I studied the Bible for 10 years. I was what they call a young Earth creationist, or YEC, and I would use apologetics to prove evidence of the Bible. And of course, I studied things against evolution, and found the evidences that prove creation and intelligent design, and I was real big into creationism. Well, I was also a truther, and I would watch. I would look up stuff on end time, end days prophecies, and I was big into watching truther videos like Jason A. and Russian vids
Hmm.
and stuff like that, and Call for an Uprising, Vigilant Christian, and watching some of Russian vids. He was hitting on the flat Earth topic a little bit, and I seen a link to, I think it was Dave Murphy's video where he was interviewed, Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes, and I had started watching it I think it was about 4.5, 5 years ago, and he was talking about how atheists had been won over to God, how they had realized that there was a God through flat Earth cosmology, and it just kind of hit my heart, and it was like, man, I need to study into this more. And so that's what really got me as being an apologetic who studies and uses experimentation and evidences to prove the existence of God already. I felt that this was another form of apologetics after I had, come to the conclusion that it was indeed true through several months of studying and trying to actually debunk it myself as a creationist. So, needless to say, I couldn't, and so from there on out, I had always studied things. I'd always knew in my heart, though, that that the Bible was geocentric, and I never believed that we lived in a where the Earth that revolved around the sun. I always believed that the sun revolved around the Earth, and I never believed the moon landing. I never, I always knew 9/11 was an inside job. Those things were like common sense to me,
Uh-huh.
but flat Earth kind of like came common sense to me through scripture and evidence, because it just lined up with everything else that I'd already known all along. So
Well, when was this? What year?
it was late 2014.
Okay, right on. Well, that's pretty awesome. And so, with regard to coming to the truth on this topic, walk us through your study. I mean, what were some of the things that um, you say you saw the video and the interview with Dave Murphy and Patricia Steer? What were some of the other things with regard to experimentation or to observation? What convicted you?
Um, I would definitely say that some of the main things, of course, water always finds its own level. It doesn't take on it takes on the shape of its container, not the exterior.
Right.
That was one big thing for me, is the water. Because I lived at the beach growing up for about 12 years of my life. So, obviously, I've traveled all over the United States um years ago, and I've been on top of some of the tallest mountains, been in the flattest deserts. So I from that point, as I know that I never seen any curvature at any height that I'd ever been. I always seen the horizon rise to meet my eye level, which I felt was also impossible on a spherical Earth. I feel like the horizon should drop the higher you rise to,
Right.
and I always felt that another big one for me was that obviously the pictures from NASA, that all of them, I studied almost every single picture that NASA has released and other institutions that they've released pertaining to images of the Earth, and all of them that I've seen have been photoshopped composites. They're not real. I mean, they're just stitched together, what they say, I mean, so I mean, you could take them in computer photo analysis and all that, and all of them prove to be false images. They're not the exact image of what the Earth looks like. So that's a big one for me. And as well as just the deeper I got into it, it was just more and more evidence, everything. I mean, now it's overwhelming how much evidence there is after 5 years of studying it. So I'm still learning things every day. But when it comes to experimentations, I've done different little things with especially experiments with water and magnetism and stuff like that. So
Well, yeah, that's great that you have done and confirmed these things for yourself. Um, with regard to the Bible, because you said that you've been reading and studying the Bible, and so um, walk us through that journey as well in reconsidering. Because myself, when I came to this awakening, I immediately, began to examine all the topics or all the passages and all the scriptures that I could find, which described either the shape of the earth or the dynamics of, the creation, especially the Genesis narrative on the creation week. And having studied extra biblical texts and that being a big part of my life, I revisited the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries in the book of Enoch, and found that with my new understanding that I could unlock a lot of what was written therein with regard to the cosmology as well. And so, can you talk about your reconsideration of the Bible and the scriptures and different stories and accounts, and share some of that with us as well?
oh, definitely. Well, to begin with, uh, let's start with my mom, for instance. I when I told her about the Earth being flat, and I gave her all the scriptures in the Bible, she believed it without a shadow of a doubt. Because my mom, she believes whatever the Bible says. I mean, if it says a
Mhm.
donkey talked, she believes a donkey talked. I mean,
Right on.
she believes the Bible for what it says. And see, I'm the type of person, I've always been scientific, and I need evidence. That's why God, he proved himself to me many times when I was younger. He showed me what evil is, what good is. He showed me what a miracle is. Everything. He proved it to me. I had to see. I was one of those types of people that I need observable evidence of what I believe in. I mean, I have to have some tangible something to grasp, to understand it.
Yeah.
And so needless to say, the evidence was big for me, but the scriptures is what got me thinking about it, and the evidence is what confirmed it. So in that being said, there's so many evidences in the Bible. There's not one spot in the Bible that um talks about a globe. I mean, all ancient cosmologies believed in a flat earth, but I would say that it's because that, like you said, through the book of Enoch was the first Bible. I mean, it was before the Torah. It's
Right.
what the founding um you know
Yeah, the
descendants that
patriarch.
came from Adam and Eve read.
Right.
I mean, it
Hmm.
was the first book, and so it depicts what they believed back then, and how what they had seen and known. And see, I believe that it is not just because that's how they saw the earth, which that makes sense as well, but I believe that it was through divine revelation. And so I believe that most of the other religions and cosmologies, they match that because it stemmed from there. And I believe that they branched off of that belief, and I believe that that came after the angels had fallen and had laid with man, and the the languages had and their religions had branched off. So I believe that a lot of those old, cosmology gods would be like fallen angels. They were the
Right.
fallen angels of those civilizations. And so I think that those stories have merged from the Book of Enoch being the same cosmology. That's why they're all similar. And so not only that, like I said, they all match what we observe. So I mean, even if it wasn't divinely inspired, they see what we see. There is no they believed exactly what we see. I mean, so, and going into what you were talking about the um apocrypha books and
Mhm.
and the extra books of the Bible, lost books. I wrote a book, published it, called the Illustrated Flat Earth Concordance, and I've read over. It's on Amazon, and I read over almost 200 lost books of the Bible and apocrypha books, and found scriptures for all of them, and for different topics that relate to flat Earth cosmology. So I know definitely what you're talking about when it comes to talking about the firmament and the seven heavens and the seven layers of the firmament or whatever, and the waters above the and the waters beneath the great deep, and the
Right.
all the things, all those topics, they're all spread out through all the lost books of the Bible. So they all confirm exactly that the Bible, and they did not believe in a spherical earth or heliocentrism. They believed in geocentric, stationary, flat earth.
Yes.
And so I think that's real key important there, and I think that all those lost books definitely back that up. And I was really admired by your I think I was studying one of your books that you had written about Irish, what was it? Irish medieval
Hmm.
apocrypha, I think it was.
Yeah, the ever new tongue. Yeah, Rob and I
Yeah.
were talking about that last night. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'd read that one. That one's a really good breakdown of that, of the cosmologies and stuff, and what they were talking about the firmament and everything. So
Yeah, that one's pretty amazing. We're 5 minutes out from break, and so I want to, when we return, if you don't mind, can you share with us some of those passages from the different apocryphal texts? Um,
oh, definitely.
yeah, that would be great. I would really appreciate that. I do want to answer a question in the chat room from Bam with regard to the atmosphere. Um, and the atmosphere does extend to the interior of the Earth. Anywhere, the air can be found and is breathable. And we know that the Earth is porous and that there is a hollow Earth entrance at the North Pole that leads to what is described in the Bible as the bottomless pit, also called the abysmal chasm by many explorers. It's also called Havelgamer in the Celtic Norse mythology, and which means the navel of the world. And so it's my belief that, and as I show in my work, that the books like the Inventio Fortunata describe this watery spout which sucks in the world's oceans. Um, and then every 6 hours, it will then expel the world's oceans. And it is what, in my opinion, is the dynamic for the tidal rhythm. And it's the structure of the earth which creates the high and the low tides. Do you know what I'm talking about by chance, Paul?
Oh yes, actually. That's one thing I was talking about the what is it called? Orlando Ferguson's Square World.
Uh-huh.
He actually incorporated, I didn't know this, but his map was based on, or the middle part was based on Paradise Found by, I think it was William, I want to say
Yeah,
William
William
Warren.
Warren, yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
by William Warren. And Paradise Found, they believed that Eden was in the middle of the earth. And in
Right.
old Apocrypha books and lost books of the Bible, it talks about Eden and paradise. It used to be in the center of the earth, and it talks about
Right.
the 4 rivers that ran out of the center of the earth. And also, I think some believe that there was a mountain there as well. Some in
Yes,
ancient
Rufus
cultures,
Negra.
yeah, or Mount Meru, or
Right.
in other cultures, yeah, or Mount Zion in the Bible, I think it's called. So,
Right. Yeah. And Mount Olympus and Greek
mhm,
mythology, the Mount of the Congregation. Yeah,
yeah.
most excellent. Well, yeah, and for people that would like to know more, the third book of the Flat Earth trilogy that I wrote is called Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. And in that book, I go into great detail on all of the topics that we are discussing here, as well that in the very last chapter, I released the Ever New Tongue, which is this ancient Irish apocryphal text that is specific to the cosmology and elaborates in great detail on what Moshe reveals in Genesis with the creation and the account of the establishment of the heavens and the earth. And so, a fascinating text. If you have any trouble finding it online, certainly you can go there to that book and get a full account of it. But yeah, we'll be right back, everybody, for second portion. But I'm thoroughly excited about having discovered you and your works and your books, and so I look forward to picking your brain and going into greater detail on your story, as well as having you share as far as the work that you've done. So, how many books do you now have available to the public with regard to what you've found and rediscovered?
I would say I have about 25 reprinted books available, and about and some of them actually are more than one book, because I compile most of the books into each author's book. So let's
Uh-huh.
say you wanted William Carpenter's 100 Proofs the Earth's Not a Globe. Well, for instance, I compile about, I think it's about 20 other books into that one book. So it's about 700 pages long. I mean, it's
Wow.
about as many pages as I can put into one book.
Uh-huh.
So, and I compile all those books into one book. His book Proctor's Planet Earth, and Dyer's Reply, and Locklear's Logic, and all of his Wallace's Wonderful Water.
All right, hold on, brother. Hold on. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
Everyday questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for a second portion. I'm interviewing Paul Rains, who has done quite an incredible job of pulling together and republishing and reprinting a lot of what is the lost flat Earth and biblical cosmology books of even modern times. And some of them, he said, are still copywritten, sort of like Gabrielle. I forget her last name, but the one on Heaven and Earth. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Henriette.
yeah, Henriette. Yeah, Gabrielle Henriette. Um, but so did you kind of start putting these together for your own interest, and then in doing that, discovered that really that probably a lot of these copies are no longer available anywhere else besides, some of these libraries and some of these universities, and probably, very few copies, if with regard to what is available worldwide. And so, I think again, this is a tremendous service that you are doing. And so, can you talk about some of the titles? And you said that you've read a lot of these, and can you share, and even recommend some to the listening audience, as far as what really affected you, or you thought that was really good and well written with regard to this topic?
Definitely. Okay. It did start with I wanted to gather all the books. I wanted them for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to have them and read them, and I kind of wanted to reprint them so that I could have them for myself. And
Right, in
then
book form, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
then it started. I wanted to be able to release I wanted to release them all to the public. I wanted to host a website, and I eventually still have this plan, but obviously I can't release all the copyrighted materials. But
Right.
I wanted to open up a website that has every single Flat Earth book available for free download, and to be able to buy the reprints if they want the hardback
Uh-huh.
format. So I wanted a way to do that. And see, I don't only get their biblical cosmology books by the Zetetics. If it's an author that wrote flat earth material, I will also get their other books as well. So like, okay, for instance, Samuel Robotham, he wrote Zetetic Cosmology, but he also wrote Zetetic Philosophy. He wrote the Medical Handbook. He wrote Phosphorus and the Wonders of Free Phosphorus. And so I have all those books as well. Several other authors, they wrote several other books as well, like Lady Blount. She wrote a lot of books on magnetism and being a curative agent and different things. She wrote stuff on favored races and different Zetetics. They had different beliefs, but they all came together. They all came together to work together for Zetetic Cosmology. I thought that was so amazing that they could work, unlike a lot of the community today. It's like it's kind of like what I first seen when I first came on the scene. Everyone was working together, and that's how it used to be in the Zetetic organization. They all work together despite their differences, and but many of them did agree on some things, and outside of biblical cosmology. And like, for instance, a lot of the members of the Zetetic Society were Adventists, and like Albert Smith, Lady Blount, but some of them were not. Like E. Bullinger, he was a dispensationalist, and needless to say, they have lots of good books. Here, I'll go through some of the titles from some of them. And let me see here. I can bring it up. Okay. So I'll go through some of the authors. All right. So, man, there's so many books. All right. Like, for instance, I'll just go to some of the main ones, like Albert Smith. Okay. He wrote, there was a magazine that was published, a monthly magazine that come out in the late 1800s and early 1900s, called The Earth Not a Globe Review. And it had about, I think, 20 something issues, and it featured many of the popular Zetetics of that day. And some of their articles that were inside of that monthly pamphlet were actually parts of their own books. And so they had a inside of their own books. So I went and got those original books, some of them. And for instance, okay, here's some of Albert Smith's books. Here's a list of some of his books. He wrote, of course, The Coming Man, Is the Earth Flat or Round? He wrote The Midnight Sun, Our Father's House, Spoiled Christians, Star Motions versus Earth's Shape, Studies in Revelations, The Sun Standing Still, The Sundial. Let's see, thoughts on Bible cosmology. And he wrote, of course, he wrote this, I think it was The Sea Earth Globe and Its Hypothetical Motions. And he wrote Zetetic Astronomy with Lady Blount, as well as many articles inside of the Earth Review magazine. So that's just from Albert Smith. And, through studying all this, I also I had to prove some of their death dates, and I had to become a member of Ancestry.com, for instance, like Gerard Hickson, who wrote Kings Dethroned. Okay. I knew he'd come out with a sequel called The Universe as It Is. And it took a lot of work for me to get his other books, because they wouldn't release them to me because they didn't know his death date. They couldn't prove it. So I had to dig through medical records and long databases of family history on Gerard Hickson until I found his death certificates and his residence and censuses of where he lived and where he traveled, everything on him, and I had to prove it to the different libraries in order to prove that he had been dead over 70 years, so that they would release his materials to me. And so, needless to say, they gave me his. Well, they didn't give it to me, but they they sold me after they of course they were able to scan all of those books, and so they sent them to me, The Universe as It Is, and The Winds That Blow, I think it is, and his other book, what was it called? Hicksonian the New Elements of Hicksonian astronomy. That's what it is. The New Elements of Hicksonian Astronomy. So I've got all of Gerard Hickson's books, and I found out so much information through studying this stuff, man. I went through maybe 5,000 newspapers that talked about flat Earth, because I became a subscriber of newspapers.com so that I could find old articles and advertisements for books also, and learn more about them and where they were written at. And because I had to contact those cities sometimes and their public libraries of where they were published, and contacted the copyright, Library of Congress, all kinds of stuff. And so I found so much interesting stuff, man. I found for Gerard Hickson, for instance, most people don't know this, that even though they've read King's Dethroned, they don't know that he was arrested for being a vigilante. Basically, he was a detective, and he was trying to stop Jack the Ripper, and
Wow.
they ended up arresting him because he didn't have a license. And so they arrested him for not having a license to do detective work on Jack the Ripper. And so I thought that was pretty interesting.
That
He
is
also
fascinating.
Yeah, he also put up a giant billboard in New York when he came to New York. A giant billboard calling out pseudoscientists to prove that stars were as far away as that they claim that they are,
Right.
and nobody could stand up to his challenges, of course. So they ended up putting his book King's Dethroned inside what they call the crazy science files at MIT, so that they still can't explain. But there's a couple in there, like Solar Fictions by A. Freeman is in there as well. But the British Library, if most people want to find a place where they can go and read a lot of the materials, like in person, the real books, most of them, the biggest collection is housed at two places. And I would say at the British Library, they have some of the most books, obviously, because the Zetetic Society was mainly focused in Britain of the time. So a lot of the books are in Britain, inside the British Library. And that obviously you have to go to a reading room and able to read them. Some of them you can't handle, though, and you're not allowed to read because they're so old and brittle and not able to be looked at. But another place is the Library of Liverpool. And that's where I want to say it was Robert Skewald, who was who came after Charles K. Johnson of the Flat Earth Society. He donated his collection. I want to say it was Robert Skewald who donated his collection to the Liverpool Library. So there's a big collection there as well. They have a good collection as well in Zion City still, where Wilbur Valivia, obviously ran Zion City and in Illinois, I want to say, if I remember correctly. And they have that there at the Zion Library, Public Library. They have some good stuff there, like the original Leaves of Healing and the special issue of that with the Flat Earth issue. And they have a bunch of stuff on Anton Darms, who was who wrote a bunch of materials on biblical cosmology as well. They have that there. So there's a lot of great books, though. I would say some of my favorite books would would probably be by William Carpenter, though I think he was one of my favorites. He wrote some great materials. Him, Lady Blount, of course, and John Hampton. He wrote some great books. There's an awesome book actually that I love, and I love it's by Gilbert Johnson. And Gilbert Johnson, he traveled all over the United States, and he was a professor, and he taught that the Earth was flat. And he was so well known for teaching that the Earth was flat that they nicknamed him Flat Earth Johnson. And it's even written on his gravestone. He actually did radio broadcasts similar to kind of like what we're doing now over over the radio back then in the early, I want to say in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and about flat Earth cosmology. And he would actually challenge people to prove the sphericity of the Earth. And he wrote a book called The Book of Light. And I had tried so hard to get this book and track it down. And the funny part is I tracked it down. The only place that it was tracked down to was NASA's astrophysicist library. This is crazy. God. It was in NASA's astrophysicist library. And so I contacted NASA astrophysicist library, and they were actually pretty nice about it. And they were like, we're sorry, but we don't have this book anymore. We donated it to the Library of Congress, but you can contact them. So I contacted the Library of Congress, and needless to say, they gave me a runaround for a while, actually, for about 6 months. And finally they released it to me, the book. And they actually screwed up, and they gave me the first edition, and they actually had 3 editions. And the first edition was only 8 pages. And I had paid for the third edition, which was about 40 pages long. And so, which was about $100 it cost, because the Library of Congress is very expensive to get materials digitized from them. So I was kind of mad about it, and I kept writing them back, and I called them, and finally they were like, we're sorry. And finally they released the third one to me free of charge after they done messed up the first one. So in the long run, I ended up getting the first edition and the third edition, and which are actually 2 different books. So it was kind of cool that I got the first edition and the third edition of Gilbert Johnson's Book of Light. And that's one of my favorite books there. It is really good. And some of the books I've actually gotten Google to release. I've wrote Google as well, and I've got them to release several books. I got them to release Henry Gowdy's book, The Earth is Not a Globe, Scientifically Proven, with over 75 illustrations. You can type that in on Google, and it'll pop right up now in Google Books to read for free. I got them to release that, and I got them to release John Abazad's The Enlightenment of the World, the third edition, which is amazing. It is an amazing book, and it has Orrin F. Hill in it, who was a popular zetetic of Boston back in the day. There was a lot of zetetics back in Boston that lived in the early 1900s, and it's got some of Orrin F. Hill's material in there as well. And you could find that on Google. And there's another book I got Google to release. I think it was R.G.S. Collimore's book, A Layman's Message. I got them to release that book as well for free and put that on Google. And I talked to Google actually about releasing several of the other books. They said they were interested in that. Maybe they'd try to track down some of them for me and release them for free. So I'm hoping that they might release some more. But I've gotten other places to release some other books as well. I got Duke University to release, Lady Blount's Our Enclosed World. You can find her book now on archives.org, Our Enclosed World. And that is a great book. Our Enclosed World, it was a monthly pamphlet, kind of like the Earth Review magazine, and it was compiled all together into a giant book. So that is an amazing book as well. Let's see. There's so many authors. I'm just going to go through some of the authors of the time. There was Amos Perry, Alexander Gleason, Alexander Dowie, Alexander McKinney's, Anton Darms, Author V. White, Orrin F. Hill, B. Charles Braw, Balaam's Ass. Let's see, Charles Aristotle Bodemer. I could not get his books. I've tried everywhere to get his books, but they're no longer in history. I even contacted the Library of Congress, and they have card catalog, like copyright, where they were copyrighted, but they no longer exist in history anywhere that I've seen. I've even wrote to try to find the publishing company of where his books were, but I did find his map, and I got the Library of Congress to release his map, and it's one of the most amazing maps I've ever seen of the flat Earth cosmology. It's got it's very detailed, and it has moon phases on it, and the sun's elliptical. What do you call that? That like the analemia.
Analemia.
Yeah, that as it's circling the plane, and it's such an amazing map of its day.
Hey, there's a beeping coming from your. It just stopped.
I think it's. Hold on.
Yeah, some kind of beeping coming from that side. Well, as I said earlier, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm definitely well impressed by your efforts. And man, we thank you on behalf of the community. What you're doing is really amazing.
Yeah, it was my stove. It was the clock on my stove.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, good. Yeah, that's better. With regard to the Alexander Gleason, did you find any more flat Earth books that he released? And also, can you name you were describing the map? Can you tell what that person's name is and what that map is again?
Yes. Okay. The map first. It is. His name was Charles Aristotle Bodemer, and the map is called the Bodemer map. Hold on. If I could look it up. Yeah, it's called the Bodemer map of the Earth, and it is amazing map. You might be able to find it under Charles A. Bodemer, the Bodemer map. And you can find that on the Library of Congress website. And you can also find that on my my page, Flat Earth Books page. I released a picture of it on there as well. The Alexander. Oh, and I sell a poster of it as well that people can order. So I've started reprinting the posters in high detail so that they could get them with the books. So they can get them at the same time, kind of like how the old books used to come with the fold-out maps. So they could get. I mean, I couldn't really print the books with the fold-out maps, but I can send the poster with the map with the book so that they can get both of them together if they include a map. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Say where it is that people can go to order this map again.
They can go to my page on Flat Earth Books on Facebook and find it. Mm-hmm. Or they can go on. Let's see. They should be able to type it in. Bodemer map of the world. Let me see. Bodemer map. Flat Earth map. Yeah, they should just be able to type it in on Google, and it should show them the Bodemer map on now on at the Library of Congress. So
okay, cool. That is very cool.
Definitely. And they have going into Alexander Gleason. Now, Alexander Gleason only wrote 2 books. He wrote Is the Bible from Heaven and Is the Earth a Globe? But that his first edition was Is the Bible from Heaven, and his second edition was Is the Earth a Globe? And then his third edition was a compilation of both of those books.
Together.
Now, he
Okay.
also, yeah, and then he also wrote he made a time chart patent through the patent department. I think it was like a time chart he made that he put a patent on. And he wrote, actually, in the special edition Leaves of Healing, Wilbur Valivia and Alexander Gleason was friends, and he wrote a small article in there with a little diagram, and it's called The Midnight Polar Sun. And he wrote that as well inside that article inside of the special edition of the Leaves of Healing.
And
So the flat
Bolivia,
Earth.
he's the one that had the $5,000 challenge to anybody that could prove the Earth was a globe. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
Wow, this is all fascinating stuff, brother. You are quite a historian, having gone back and examined and looked through all this. I mean, just the fact that you're able to rattle off all these names and connect them to the books that they've released, and that you've also gathered not only the Zedic cosmology materials, but all of this other information. That's quite a fascinating journey. Yeah, I think that, what you went through is a book in and of itself, and that you should, put it down to paper, just talking about how you gathered all this material. I think people would be truly interested in reading about that. And, of course, all as resource, being able to read and look into all the different resources and materials that you've gathered as well.
Definitely. Oh, you're not the only one that's told me that, actually. I've had a couple people after I told them, they were like, "My goodness."
Right, right.
Definitely, there's been a lot of books that have been lost to history, though. That's the sad part, and I wish I could find them. I'm Some of them actually have came through, and I've managed to find them over time. Some of the ones that I thought were lost. So I hope that a lot of them that I think is still lost is able to be found as well. I
Right.
think that they're out there somewhere. I've managed to contact a lot of people, like the lady at the that runs the Fogel Museum on Fogel Island, the Flat Earth Museum,
Uh-huh.
and she's willing to trade with me, and give me a bunch of stuff that I don't have. I showed her my list, and she was amazed. She was highly
Awesome.
amazed.
All right, hold on, brother. We'll be right back for the second hour.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pigeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at
Cormorant rose up to the
sacredwordrevealed.com.
sky and looked all over the earth as a man looks at the dish in front of him. That's from the Solomon and Balka story as it comes to pass. All right, and so welcome back, everybody. I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio, and I'm greatly honored to be interviewing Paul Rains of Flat Earth Books. You can find his group on Facebook, and he has listed there, and as well for sale, a lot of the reprints of a lot of these long lost and forgotten books in connection to not only Flat Earth, but other topics as well. And so I think we should all applaud him in his efforts to get this material released and to compile it in manner, because really, probably you have now one of the largest Flat Earth libraries of long lost and forgotten and forbidden texts, and the fact that you're making that available to people to examine, to read, and to because I discovered you when somebody had made mention on one of our shows about the book that Gerard Hickson wrote, the follow-up to Kings Dethroned, and could not find it anywhere, and then discovered you and that you had a copy available of it. And so can you tell us a little bit about that book as well? Because I know that, some of our listening audience is certainly intrigued and will be very happy to know that they can reach out to you to get a copy of it. And so have you read it, and what's it about? And because I know a lot of people are very blown away by Kings Dethroned and the effort that Gerard Hickson placed in that book.
Well, I have read it. Actually, I've read a lot of the books that I have. Most of them, well, some of them I've skim read it over, most of them,
Yeah.
most all of them. But of
lot of
course, there's so
material.
many. Exactly, it's a lot of material. But some of my favorites I've definitely read over. Now, The Universe as It Is, I would say don't give your hopes up. It's a very short book, and actually it's kind of a mockery of the globe's what do you call it? The creation of the globe, and how they claim that it came to be, and how it formed, and how it's basically it's his interpretation of basically that right there, and it's kind of like a mockery of their own story. And so he doesn't even really go into any detail of anything in that book, in that particular book. But in my book that I reprinted, I put all of his books into one book. So it comes with King's Throne first edition. It comes with The Universe as It Is, which is part 2. It also comes with The Winds That Blow and The Elements of New Hicksonian Astronomy. Okay, now I want to go into a little bit of detail about Gerard Hickson. See, I originally thought that he was just a geocentric believer. I didn't think that he was a flat Earth believer or a zetetic. And so, needless to say, after reading The Universe as It Is, it kind of, I was like, well, maybe he was just a geocentric believer. But on the cover of The Universe as It Is, it has a flat Earth map. So it kind of eluded me. I was like, well, I don't know. But then I got his book, The Velocity of Light in Question, and he also he pretty much debunks Falcott in there, and in his
With the pendulum.
yeah, and in Elements of New Hicksonian Astronomy, which is amazing book. It's very short, but I'm gonna go over the new element of Hicksonians. It's called, okay, this is what it says. It says number 3. So obviously there was more, and I've already looked for them. I couldn't find them, but this says number 3, the Hicksonian Society's Journal, The Elements of New Hicksonian Astronomy by Gerard Hickson, and number 1. It's a list. The first page is a list, and it says number 1, the Earth is at the center of the visible universe. Number 2, the Earth stands still. Number 3, the surface of the sea is level. Number 4, the surface of the Earth upon which we live in, for all practical purposes, a circular plane surrounded by an impenetrable barrier of ice known as the Antarctic Circle, and having what has hereunto been known as the North Pole at the center of the plane. As no man has ever been able to cross the ice barrier of the Antarctic circumference, nothing beyond it is known, neither is it possible to obtain any knowledge concerning the depth or underside of the earth. Man may indulge in speculations, but nothing is known concerning the shape or the dimensions of the earth beyond the confines of the circular plane, which we now, that word is crossed out. I can't read it now, and I think it says now, inhabit. In traveling westward on any given latitude, so as to return to our starting point, we necessarily use the compass. The compass always points toward the north or central magnetic pole, the right angle to the north, and moves with the change of position of the traveler, so that he really describes a circle in the horizontal plane round the central pole. Number 5, the height of the sun above the surface varies between 2,500 and 4,500 miles. Its distance is a line from the observer at London, varying between 3,500 and 6,000 miles. At midday, according to the season, and between 3,500 miles at midday in summer to 10,000 miles at midnight in winter. For the sake of simplicity, the mean distance of the sun above the surface of the earth may be said to be less than 4,000 miles. 6, the diameter of the sun is less than 40 miles. 7, the sun travels round the central or north pole once in every 24 hours, describing the circumference of the equator at the vernal and autumnal equinox, and the circumference of the lines of Cancer and
Capricorn.
Yeah, he's got it spelled funny. Capricorn at the northern summer and winter solstices, respectively. So anyway, this list goes on and on. I mean,
Wow.
it's kind of it. So obviously, he has a he was definitely a flat Earth believer. He was not just geocentric, but he was not, as far as I can tell, he was not a zetetic. He had his own definition of what he was, which was Hicksonian, obviously. So he called it Hicksonian. So, but he was definitely into flat Earth cosmology. So that was amazing for me to come to the conclusion that he actually did believe that the Earth was flat. So I think that also in studying that, what I realized that how he came to be that in his first book. See, he was what was called back then, or what we call today, a meteorologist. He studied meteorology when it came to the sun and the winds, and he was kind of like what a news reporter did today, when it came to determining the wind and everything.
Forecasting
And so
weather.
Yeah, and he wrote a book called The Winds That Blow. And in that book, he he uh he realized that it wasn't possible that the sun could be as far away as that they claimed it was. And so that's what led him into King's Dethroned, and and kind of trying to, tear apart what modern scientists say, that the sun is millions miles away, and so that's what led him into that, was meteorology. And I thought that was amazing, that how his story of kind of how he evolved into being into zetetic cosmology through that. So
Yeah, that is a fascinating account and a fascinating story. And something that Rob and I were talking about again in reading through chapter by chapter, verse by verse, the book of Enoch. We were reading in chapter 34 through 36 the description of the winds and the portals. And I had told him how, that decrypting the book of Enoch and all of the description of the movements of the sun and the moon back and forth in transit between the Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, I was able to also apply that same thinking to the winds and how it is that the winds being released. The Book of Enoch describes 3 portals in all the cardinal directions, and he describes a very cold wind, which I believe is closer to Antarctica, and then a mild wind where the dews and the rains are released from, and then a very hot and dry wind, which I believe is closer to the equator, where we see again the deserts and those particular regions being formed in topography here upon the earth. And so I can totally understand how Hickson, in his study of weather, the patterns and the movements of storm and creation, the evaporation, condensation, could come to better understanding that, again, it is the sun in its movement back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer that not only changes the days and the seasons and the months, but also the weather patterns as it goes over northern climates and then into southern climates over what is our fall and winter, but the spring and summer for the outer circle of the earth, with regard to the plane of the earth.
Oh, definitely. Speaking of the flat Earth books, I've also collected all the ancient books as well, on many different cosmologies. I have biblical, Chinese, Greek, Hindu, Irish, Islamic, Mayan, Native American, Norse, and I it goes on and on and on. But I have all the old books when it pertains to biblical and flat Earth cosmology. I have those as well. And some of my favorites, of course, would be Cosmos's topography.
Yeah,
And there was a bunch of others, like some people don't know about. Let me see here. When it came to some of them, let me go into there. They have, let me see. Oh, they have the earliest cosmologies written in 1909. That was a great book. It really breaks down the cosmologies of the Earth and what they used to believe. William Warren, who wrote Paradise Found, he actually wrote another book called The True Key to Ancient Cosmology and Mythical Geography. And he wrote a book as well that is very interesting on ancient cosmologies.
He's a heliocentrist, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
And there was a couple others. There was some really good ones though that I had.
The Book of the Earth. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, the Book of the Earth. Yeah, that's a good one as well.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There's a bunch of old ones, a bunch of old books though. I have so many of them. When it comes to biblical. And when we're talking, what you were talking about the Book of Enoch, actually, there's 4 books of Enoch, and they all talk about the firmament and the 7 heavens and traveling up into the the seven heavens and talking about what the firmament is made of,
Right.
and what's the different levels of it, and what it governs, and the celestial bodies, and how they move, and their order. So I really found those interesting. So
Well, yeah, I am certainly interested in those as well. And do you have a section for just like the ancient books and those particular accounts? Because I would certainly like to get a list, to examine some of those.
oh,
Do you have on your website a breakdown, of different sections, subsections, or anything of that nature?
I have not yet put a biblical, what do they call those? A bibliography together. I
Yeah.
have of the Zetetic books. I have managed to do that, to compile that, the Zetetic book collection. I have managed to compile a giant list of that, and it has, like I said, it has almost over 500 books. And it also contains books that I need, or books that no longer exist
Uh-huh.
as well. On that list, and I have them check marked off by all the ones that I do have. But I have not made a list so far of the ancient books that I have. But I can send you a link to that. I'll be
Yeah, that would be
glad. Those
great.
are all
Uh,
all those are all freely given. They were written most of them were all written in the
yeah.
1500s, so
Right.
they're mostly all freely available. But
Awesome.
there's some really good books like that I found. There's a bunch of Greek books too. A lot of people say that, like, the Greeks proved the Earth was a globe, and
Right.
that it
Uh-huh.
was a ball of satins, and which over 95% of the Greeks believed that in flat Earth cosmology. They believed,
Yeah.
in Tartarus below, and they believed in Olympus, the
Right.
Mount of
Mount
Olympus.
Olympus. Yeah.
They believed that Atlas held up the sky. I mean, but there was particular, what they called back then, pre-Socratic philosophers, Greek philosophers back then, and many of them believed in the cosmology, in the flat Earth cosmology. You still there?
Yeah. Your sound kind of went out a little bit there.
Yeah,
Uh,
but anyway, they had Lanctus. He believed in flat Earth cosmology. Some people know of Anaxander. He believed that the world was flat as well, and that the stars kind of moved around the Earth. And he had an interesting model I thought was really amazing. Um, there was a bunch of them. There was there's a book written in Latin that's a flat Earth book called Contra's Antipods. It was written in 1496. I need to get it to find a translator to translate that one. But I have books as well that need to be translated from different people. I've managed to get, because I've got a lot of people helping me on this, actually,
That's
from different
awesome.
cultures all over the world. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I've contacted a lot of people to get this going.
Hmm.
There's this lady. She has a book called Flat Earth Papers by William Carpenter, and it's the only copy in existence. And she has it listed for literally $10,000 on eBay, and it probably has maybe 50 flat earth pamphlets inside of it. And some of them I don't even have, that they're so rare that they're lost. And I've contacted her. She's supposed to be letting me get a digital copy of it eventually when she
Uh-huh.
decides to digitize it. But definitely worth getting that one. That is an amazing, beautiful book, and it's well preserved. I mean, and she's done a well job of keeping it preserved as well.
Awesome.
There's different books like that. They're spread out all over the world, and through this, I've actually started my own collection of old books. Um I have the second. There's only two copies in existence left that I know of Joseph Cooper's "The Earth is Flat After All," written in 1909, and I have one of the only copies in the world of the actual book on hardback, and the other copy is in a museum actually, and which is a little bit more better quality of mine than mine's a little bit more torn and old, but
Wow, that's
theirs is
amazing,
insane.
brother.
Yeah, I have a couple more actually. I have what else do I have? I have a signed book by Anton Darms, The Abundant Gospel. It is not a flat Earth book, but it is a signed book by Anton Darms. And I have Cyclic Law by Thomas Reed. He was a flat earther as well. He knew Samuel Rowbotham personally, and he wrote a book with Albert Smith, and I forget what it's called. Oh, Gleanings in Old. That's what it's called, with Albert Smith. And Albert Smith did the preface to it, but he wrote the book Gleanings of Old. But I have the book Cyclic Law, and it was right before he became a flat Earth believer, and he used astrology actually. He believed in horoscopes and following he believed that the moon and the stars would controlled our behavior and diseases, and he was a doctor, an MD, and he believed that the of course he's the one that started the whole cyclic movement that's still used by doctors today and scientists, that they believe that the moon and the tides and the stars and everything and the months control our behaviors and our eating habits and stuff like that. So, and they think it has a lot to do with our health. But he wrote a great book on that called Cyclic Law, which I also have that. So, amazing book.
Wow, that is quite amazing, and again, quite an extensive collection. And certainly, I would be interested in speaking with you, outside of this interview to talk about if we can collaborate in some way to help one another and to making some of this available. But I think that your efforts are going to help preserve a lot of information that otherwise may have just disappeared and ended up just becoming lost. And again, with regard to putting together all of these resources, most of the people that will benefit haven't even begun the research into this topic yet, because it's still so ridiculed and condemned and judged. But those that do come to discernment on this as truth, they'll appreciate it.
Definitely. What I found was amazing is in the early in the late 1800s, there were globe believers actually that came up and rose against Zetetics, kind of like they are today. And they wrote several books against Zetetic cosmology. And they were by popular scientific figures of the day, like Flammarion, who made the famous Flammarion engraving.
Yeah.
And
under the firmament.
Yeah. And Proctor actually wrote a magazine against Zetetic cosmology because he rose against Samuel Rowbotham and featured Samuel Rowbotham in some of his articles inside of his famous magazine against Zetetics. His magazine was called Knowledge Magazine, and it was supposedly against Zetetics. And many people like that, Proctor, Dyer, Locklear, Alfred Wallace, the one that went up against John Hampton in the Bedford Level experiment. And
the court case.
And many of them wrote pamphlets and they wrote books back and forth against each other. And what I want to do one day, hopefully, is make like a kind of like a book of debates about featuring both sides, so that I can not only appeal to the Zetetic community, but also to unbelievers that may be interested in the other side of the story, and that they can kind of see both sides of the story and the experiments on both sides and get their own understanding of what it came to be. And also, I think it would be a great kind of story to show the chronological order of how it all played out and the story of it. So I think it would be amazing to make a book of or maybe some volumes, I don't know,
Uh-huh.
of both sides and kind of like show how they went together. I think that there was some amazing stuff that the flat earth community wrote in response and rebuttals and with experimentations and stuff, because a lot of their old books are actually against
Right.
against it, like Proctor's Planet Earth. That's a response to Proctor's Knowledge magazine. And see, I mean, it would be nice to read the other side of the story to understand what this story is talking about. You see what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, so I've actually gathered most of the Globe Believers books as well in response to both sides. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. And that's cool that you are open to doing that, because yeah, I believe that people that are interested in examining the topic, they should study both sides of it. And yeah, and there's a lot of that going on right now with regard to, people challenging myself and also Rob Skiba and on these particular topics. But we'll be right back, everyone, for final segment.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
For they had said, come and let us build for ourselves a city, and let us take axes and break open the firmament, so that the water flow from there and descend below, that he may not do unto us as he did to the generation of the flood. And let us wage war with those in heaven, and establish ourselves there as gods. The Chronicles of Jeremiah, chapter 30. All right, brother, I want to turn it back over to you and give you a chance to finish up your thought on what we were talking about with regard to, the different books and um, all your efforts and your work. And if you would, just give out your website and contact information once more for those that, are interested in what we're talking about. And certainly I know that people will be interested in the library and the collection that you have available as well.
Definitely. Well, going back to what you were talking about collaborating, actually that I've been trying to find someone to help out a little bit. Actually, I just this obviously isn't my full-time job. I have a full-time job, and this is kind of my secondary hobby and slash, what I do on my spare time. So I don't have a lot of time, especially with researching and writing all these different places and collecting the books. It's really hard for me to get around to printing the books and to compiling them into and I try to put the original covers as well onto the front of the cover of the book and everything. And it's just the printing company I have is really small and American based, and I'm trying to branch it out to a better printing company so that shipping would be a little bit cheaper on people that live outside of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and possibly to a better book printing company with a little bit better quality uh, imagery, because the I don't sit around and type. I don't have the time to type out all these books, obviously. So I do page for page scans of the exact books scans that I get, and I print them, or I don't print them, but I put them together in a PDF and to where they can be printed into a book. And so they're page for page scans, and sometimes they're a little hard to read on the book company I get. I mean, you can read them, but they're just I need more time. I need more assistance with people that are willing to come together and help brighten the images and compile them together for me and put them together. And it would be nice to get some other people on board. If anyone's willing to do that, that would be amazing. I have a they can find I have a flash drive. Actually, I sell a complete flash drive with over 500 Zetetic books on it. I sell it for $50. You can find it on eBay under the largest flat Earth collection, or the ultimate flat Earth collection. On eBay, you can find that, and it's for $50. And the only reason why I use the proceeds from the money for that, the money for posters, the money for the reprinted books, all those monies go towards paying for new books to be released from universities, museums, rare collectors, and libraries. So, because they're a lot of money, like I was explaining before,
Yeah.
they're they're a lot of money. You have to pay. It's like I think it's like 40 to 50 cents a page to have
Per
scanned.
page, right?
Plus
Yeah.
you got plus you got to have you got to pay the handling fees. It's like anywhere from $15 to $25 just for them to do the service for you. So, and if you're talking about a book that's got 100 pages in it, I mean, you're looking at a good chunk of money there. So
Right.
about $70, and you're talking hundreds of books like that. That's a lot of money. So I've already
Yeah.
invested a lot of money into it, but I'm really not doing it for the money. I'm really doing it because I want to get this out there for people to have. I think that the whole world, it should be made available to us. It's
Right.
like this whole thing has been swept under the rug and hidden, and it's like they don't teach you this stuff in school. I mean, they don't tell you about it in history. It's like it's vanished, and I think that's the biggest key. Is like there's so much out there. It's like it's unbelievable. There's more written on flat Earth cosmology than there is on the spherical Earth. I
Right.
mean, at least that's
so
what I
just,
can see.
yeah. Yeah,
And
because
and so
really, you have thousands of years of history compared to, the last 500 years.
exactly. And see, what I think is amazing is that all the experiments and everything, the evidences that they used, the Zetetics used, still holds up today.
Right.
And I think that it's cool because a lot of the things that we're seeing from new in the flat Earth community, it's like it was already explained back then in those
Yes.
books. When you start reading them, you're like, man, I just learned that the other day by somebody, and then really, it was already there. It was
Right.
like it was right there the whole time. They already knew it, and it obviously is because there's nothing new under the sun. It's
Exactly.
already been told. Somebody already done it, and it's already there. So
Right.
I think that is amazing that's already there for us, and they have all the pieces for us, and the pieces that
Right.
we don't have. I mean, that they don't have, we have. I mean, it's like, of course, we got some new stuff that we use. We got lasers now and
The
high altitude
P900.
weather balloons.
Yeah,
The
right.
P900. I mean, we could do a lot better experiments today, but in yet they most all of their so far everyone that I've seen, every experiment that I've seen them do has held up to the test of time, and I think that is amazing. But anyway, they can find me on my Flat Earth Books page on Facebook called Flat Earth Books, or they could find me in my group, or they can in Flat Earth Books group, or they can contact me through my email, which is Paul N, like the letter N, and Jess at gmail.com. Paul and Jess at gmail.com. And that would be my wife, my lovely wife that helps me. So
JESS.
they can find me. Yes, Paul and Jess at gmail.com.
All right, brother.
And
That's awesome.
definitely. So, and definitely looking for some collaborators if if you want to get on board with that, or anybody that would be willing to help, man, it would be great. I know you go through Lulu, I think it is, right? And I wanted to try to I looked at Lulu a little bit and was thinking about it. I know that what I had to put on Amazon when I published my two books, the Flat Earth Apocrypha and Extra Biblical Text book, and the Illustrated Flat Earth Concordance that I have on Amazon. I had to jump through flaming hoops to get those books on there. I mean, it's a giant process to try to get them to accept a book on there, and it takes a long time. So to get it perfect, because they want it perfect on there. So
right. Yeah. And well, what we do is we don't just reprint the pages. We actually print in large font and 14-point font what was the original, the contents of the original book, so that it's easier on the eyes and less taxing on the mind to do the research. And for people that are older, like myself, you can actually see and read and not have your eyes bug out from studying the very little font that they used to have.
yeah,
The habit of publishing, just because I guess there was so much material and so many pages, and they had to do it in like even 8-point font sometimes. I mean, it's crazy how
Yeah.
small the print can be. But yeah, we'll talk about those things, afterwards. But I wanted to get you to, if you would, to read some of the quotes, some of the passages from the concordance that you compiled and put together, if you have that available, and if you'd like to
I
share
do.
some. All right, yeah, that would be great. Let's spend 5-10 minutes on you just sharing some different quotes that you like, some of your favorites.
All right. Well, some of my favorite verses from some of the Apocrypha books and lost books of the Bible. Let's go into let's say the firmament real quick. Okay, let's go into the firmament and see maybe a book that no one's ever heard of, or maybe they've heard of it but never read it. Um, let's see here. Okay. How about let's go with all right, here we go.
All
Let's
right.
go with the
While
all
you're
right.
looking for the quote, I'm going to answer a question really quickly from the chat room. Anthony Dixon asked me what I think about the complete Jewish Bible, and I do think that the complete Jewish Bible is really interesting, in that the description of the firmament is cited as being a dome, and similar to Amos 9:6, where the translation in the King James is troop. It actually is translated in I think it's the ESV, as being the vaulted dome of the earth. And so you find that translation in a lot of these ancient accounts, where the firmament is described as a solid bowl-like structure that encompasses the circle of the earth, and that divides the waters above from the waters below. But go ahead, brother.
Okay. Um, here's one right here. Okay. This is the from the Ascension of Isaiah, and it's chapter 7, verses 8 through 14, and it says, "And the Father of the one who is greater you will also see, because for this purpose I was sent from the seventh heaven, that I might make all this clear to you. And we went up into the firmament, I and he, and there I saw Samael and his hosts, and there was a great struggle in it, and the words of Satan, and they were envying one another, and as above, so also on earth. For the likeness of what is in the firmament is here on earth. And I said to the angel, What is this envying? And he said to me, So it has been ever since this world existed until now, that this struggle will last until the one comes whom you are to see, and he will destroy him. And after this he took me up above the firmament. This is the first heaven. There I saw a throne in the middle, and on the right and on the left of it were angels. Okay, and that was a verse from the Ascension of Isaiah, um, about the firmament. Now, there's
Mhm.
several others. I have actually a giant list on verses about the firmament,
Uh-huh.
and I think this is cool. From the third book of Enoch, it's very short. From the third book of Enoch, chapter 5, verse 11, it says, "The highest of the high heavens, the abode of thy glorious name, and thy high, and the high and the exalted throne in Abaroth Raka, in the highest." So they called the highest level, or the seventh heaven, the Abaroth,
Right.
of the Raka. And the seven heavens together of the firmament they called the Raka, of course.
Right.
And
Yeah, you see that
anyway,
same cosmology described in the second book of Enoch. It's Aravath, but yeah, when they
yeah.
describe the ten heavens. But yeah.
Yeah, the 10 heavens, exactly. And anyway, here's some about the waters above, and I thought this was amazing. Here's one. It says, here we go. This is the prayer for, oh, yeah, the prayer for Azura, and I'm pretty sure this is an actual apocryphal book, and it says, yeah, it's in the King James, and it says, "Oh, all ye waters that be above the heaven, bless ye the Lord, praise and exalt him above all forever." Um, okay, and I'm gonna go into another topic. I got some other ones that's really cool.
Yeah, sure. Any
Waters
topic.
below. Let's see. There's one right here that's amazing when it talks about the seal, Earth being made like a seal under, in
Yeah, the
Job when it
clay.
talks about, yeah,
Right.
like clay under the seal. Well, there's a verse that goes along with that in the Testament of Moses, or some people call it the Assumption of Moses. In the Testament of Moses in chapter 12, it says that the lights of the heaven, the foundations of the earth, have been made and approved by God and are under the signet ring of his right hand. So that goes to confirm that the signet ring is the same thing as like a seal or a stamp
Right.
of being pressed into the clay. So that goes with that.
Very cool.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Let's see, the ends, corners. Oh, here's one about the corners. This is from the third Enoch, the third book of Enoch, chapter 12, verse 4. It says, "For it is splendor went forth in the four quarters of the Abaroth Raka, and in through the seven heavens, and in the four corners of the world, and he put it in my hand." So that's talking about the four corners of the earth and the four corners of the apparently of the firmament as well. And here's some about the pillars of the earth. Or no, this is pillars of heaven. I'm sorry. Okay, so they have the pillars of the heavens. They had one about the pillars of the earth as well that I found interesting. Oh, yeah, okay. This is from the Shepherd of Hermes, which is actually a very amazing, powerful book. I love the Shepherd of Hermes.
Yeah, I do too.
The Shepherd of Hermes, chapter 4, verse 130, and it says, "And for that you saw her sitting upon a bench, it denotes a strong position, because a bench has 4 feet and stands strongly, and even the world itself is upheld by the 4 elements." So I thought that was. And in the third book of Enoch, in chapter 37, verse 2, it says that there are put up pillars of brimstone when it's talking about in the underworld. And I thought that was cool that it was when it was talking about in Sheol, it was said that that the pillars are made of brimstone. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, very cool, brother. We've got just like 8 minutes remaining, and so I just wanted to give you a chance to share why you think this topic is important, especially because I believe we're in the end time generation, the fig tree generation, and why you think people should research it with open mind.
Yes, I definitely agree that we are in the end times. I think that the prophecies being fulfilled, and like the books have been being opened up,
Right.
and the knowledge is being revealed to us. And I think that it's like I was saying earlier, man. My whole family, my mother, my mom, my stepdad, who's a pastor, my wife, my children, my brothers, my sisters, they all believe that the earth is flat. After I've talked to them about it. I mean, they're not as adamant about it as I am,
Right.
but they accept it. They accept it because it's what the Bible says. And
Right.
and I find that amazing. But like my grandpa and my grandma, they're a little bit harder to persuade. My grandpa, he says that Jesus himself would have to come back and tell himself that when he comes back that the earth is flat. But my grandma, she says that it doesn't matter. She says it don't matter because when God comes back, he's going to flatten it all anyway and reshape the earth.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
I tell you, I agree to an extent, but like I was explaining earlier, and I tried to explain to her, it does matter. I've
Yeah,
seen
I
so
agree.
many testimonies of so many people that used so many pseudoscience excuses to evade the creator and to live a lifestyle or to whatever means that they could to justify their their reasoning and their logic for what they do or what they believe. And so I think that it's definitely matters because so many people I've seen led to God and Christ even through flat earth cosmology. I think that it is very, very important. So it definitely matters, especially in the last days. I think that it's part of the grand illusion, the that's going on in the world, part of the grand illusion. And I think it has to do with the Antichrist and ushering
Yeah,
in the new world order. And
right. I agree.
and and I think in the last days it has the all of it. It all comes together. The Space Force and I think that they'll stand together against God in the Valley of Megiddo, and paint
Right.
him as like this invading alien, and we have to stand against this invading alien. I mean, or maybe even possibly a false rapture. That they'll try to put out before God comes back. And try
Right.
to say that people are being raptured. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how it'll play out, but I know that it's all coming to be as the scriptures say. I mean, so far most all the prophecies have been fulfilled through the entire Bible except for just quite a few, which is I mean right at the end of where we're at. I mean, we're in the somewhere around the beginning of sorrows and the first trumpet being blown. I mean, we're right there.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with you, brother. I mean, the studying all of this and examining what you talk about as the strong delusion, it's my opinion the whole premise of them, declaring that God is the extraterrestrial, the ancient aliens, and that they created us, that whole premise of them being from other worlds or other galaxies, all that is destroyed by the whole understanding of true biblical cosmology. And we know that, the fallen angels are the demons that were cast down and have been banished here, and that they're not from out there, they're from inside the earth where Sheol is located, the domain of Legion, and that's who they truly are. And so, yeah, I think this topic matters in that for especially those that are going to bend the knee to the Antichrist and that accept the mark of the beast, this at that time will be the most critical truth for helping them to understand and not be persuaded in such manner. And so, um, again, I applaud you for your efforts and for doing all that you do. And yeah, we'll talk very soon about how we can help to make and to bring your work into public consideration and to make these books and print them in a way that people can be really benefit from the study of them. But just the fact that you're collecting and gathering all of them is truly, truly amazing, brother. We again applaud you. One more time, give out your Facebook, your contact information.
yes, they can find me on Flat Earth Books page on Facebook, Flat Earth Books group on Facebook, and they can reach me at my email at Paul and the letter N and Jess, Jess. So Paul and Jess at gmail.com.
All right. Hey, brother, have you attended any of the conferences, especially the first Flat Earth conference, since it was there in North Carolina where you were?
Actually, I did. Nathan came. He stayed at my house and interviewed me that week. of the North Carolina Conference, Nathan Thompson.
Yeah,
And,
good brother. Love Nathan.
And actually, I had a ticket to go, and something came up with work, and I wasn't able to go to the North Carolina Conference, and which I'm very disappointed that I wasn't able to go. I'm hoping that it'll be again soon around. I know Robbie Davidson isn't doing it again, but
Yeah.
I hope that it will be eventually around North Carolina again. I was at the Flat Oberfest. I had a table set up and managed to talk to Mark, Rob, and Bob Noddle about my project working with restoring the Flat Earth books at the Flat Oberfest. And that was in South Carolina in Greenville a few months back. And actually, I'm going to be at the Biblical Earther Conference in April hosted by Nathan Roberts, author of the Doctrine of the Shape of the Earth, and in Georgia on April 3rd through 4th, and I'll do a presentation up there with a PowerPoint presentation, give kind of a testimony, and I'll have a book table set up as well there. So if anybody would like to come and check that out, that would be awesome.
Very cool, man. Hey, it was good making your acquaintance, and look forward to speaking with you further. I know that everybody appreciates your testimony, and again, all your efforts. God bless all. Good night.
Sacred Word Revealed comes to Atlanta, Georgia on March 27th through 29th, 2020. Purposed to reveal end times mysteries, to prepare the final generation, we must don the full armor of God. Featuring Zen Garcia, Gary Wayne, Stephen and Yana Ben Noon, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Justin James Garcia, Dr. Joy Pugh, Rob Skiba, Laurel Austin, buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.